Welcome into the first episode of Vandy 24/7 Live. I'm Billy Derrick here with Vandy 24/7 Sports, and just want to start by thanking everybody that has joined our page and hopped over to Vandy 24/7. Of course, as we make the move, it's gone really well. So we're looking forward to keeping it rolling. But today marks the first episode of Vandy 24/7 Live, and I'm going to go Monday through Thursday, no show Friday. So Monday through Thursday, right here at 10 a.m., Monday through Thursday. You can watch it on our YouTube channel right now, and then you can catch it later on the podcast feed as well. But I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First, you can see them on the screen right now as well. The Wash House. Find them online at thewashhouseclean.com. They're a basketball sponsor. Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, mpmci.com. Sutherland and Belk, sbinjurylaw.com. John Levin and his company, Wobble Bond Dickinson, big Vanderbilt supporter, and Yeaman Packaging Systems. On today's show, we're going to get into Vanderbilt football, and I'm joined by Will Forbes, who has been a part of our football coverage before, has contributed to a lot of our coverage. Will, thanks for checking in, man. How you doing?
Had myself muted. I'm doing good, man. It's been a little bit. It was a good season for Vanderbilt in 2024. Better than a lot of people thought it would be, right? A lot of people didn't even know that they would win 4 games or maybe even an SEC game, Billy. But here we are, 7-6, first winning season since 2013. A lot of momentum going into the season, the off season. It's been a good year, man.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. We'll talk about the transfer portal activity. We'll look ahead to next season. And again, anytime Will's on, we'll get into heavy football. Today we've got Will on. Tomorrow we'll have Joey Dwyer on to talk a little basketball. Wednesday, Chris and Luke and myself, of course, with the roundtable. Hoping to get Robbie on potentially Thursday, but could be a new guest each day. And maybe we get a guy like a Mitch Light on here that Vandy fans want. But if you guys want other guests on, feel free to throw them on the board. Reach out to me, and I'll reach out to those guests. But let's start with just a recap of the season. You know, we've talked, before in the past, pretty strongly about, how we felt about this team, even at the beginning of the season, after the win against Virginia Tech. But for this team to finish 6-6, get to that 7th win, and Joey and I talked about it a lot too. That 7th win, I thought, was massive. I mean, I thought, because if you finish 6-7, Will, I think that's a downer. And even Robbie talked about this with on the very first podcast as we moved over here to Vandy 24/7. He said that would have been a downer. I'm with Robbie there. I know you agree as well. I think this was big legacy-wise, too. I mean, first winning season since 2013. It was massive to get that 7th win, and I think it put a cap in it and really solidified what they did this season, proved that it was not just a one-hit wonder against a team like Alabama or even that road win at Kentucky. And they came close at LSU and even Tennessee. It wasn't 56-0. So this was a different-looking team throughout the season, Will. But, man, I think getting that 7th win was just massive.
Yeah, and by the way, congratulations on the merger. I forgot to mention that earlier. I think it's gonna be great for the fans. It's gonna be nice to have all the information at one site. I think it's gonna be really good for everybody involved. Yeah, man. I mean, 7-6 was a big deal. I mean, we're talking about him tying Bobby Johnson's best season in his tenure as Vanderbilt football coach, or losing and just being another Derek Mason. Now, obviously, Derek Mason never beat number 1 Alabama, but he also never had a winning season in his 5 or 6 years as the Vanderbilt football coach. So this is already putting Clark ahead of Derek Mason, which we all wanted that to happen. And, Billy, even though James Franklin went 9-4 in back-to-back seasons, I would say that might be the best season in Vanderbilt history just because of all the teams we beat, man. And then just everything that happened and the excitement we had. Even when we had Jordan Rodgers and Austin Carter-Samuels, it just felt like this season was just different and exciting. When have we ever had an electric player like Diego Pavia on a Vanderbilt football team? Like, I can't remember since I've been a fan, someone like him that gets the fan base excited, beating number 1 Alabama at home, carrying the goalposts down. Broadway, throwing it into the river. I mean, this is like a movie, man. It was the best season that I can remember, even if we only got 7 wins. And it's got me. This is going to be the most highly anticipated Vanderbilt football season maybe ever in 2025.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I want to go back to like my thinking changed throughout the season. Heading into the Virginia Tech game, I did not think Vanderbilt was going to win that game. I thought they had a shot, but looking at the matchup, I thought Virginia Tech had a good physical defense, and I thought their offense. I didn't think Vanderbilt could hang with Virginia Tech physically, and in the build. You look at where Virginia Tech was in their build and where Vanderbilt was. I thought my thinking, Will, was that Vandy's behind. Vandy's a step behind Virginia Tech. Well, it turns out that Pavia made the world of difference. They get that win. That changed it a little bit for me. And then, of course, you had the Georgia State debacle, and that sent us down a peg, which was probably a good thing. I think that was a good thing for the team, and it was a good thing for fans to realize that, hey, because we learned a lot about the team right at that Georgia State game, probably learned the most about them in that Georgia State game that, yeah, they're good. They can beat a Virginia Tech, but they can also stoop down to a Georgia State level. And then you move forward. Of course, you beat Alabama, and that's the greatest win in program history. So I think that in itself makes this the most meaningful football season in Vanderbilt history. Now, I think they have to. It may not be as meaningful. Say, I say Pavia gets hurt. He was hurt this year, but say something awful happens and next season goes awry and Vanderbilt misses a bowl game and things go downhill, which I don't think will happen. Then it may not be as meaningful, but I think this really catapults them in getting Pavia back, winning the bowl game. That's why it's meaningful. And Clark talks about this team, leaving a legacy. That Alabama win, I think we're going to look back at that win 3-4 years from now saying that's what started it. That's what kickstarted the revolution, as the Doorport guys would say on Twitter. Like, that's what started it. And then you roll in, you beat Kentucky on the road right after that. And so they cemented it. It's not like they beat Alabama and, okay, secret's out. Vanderbilt's not beating another SEC team this year. They go on the road, beat Kentucky. In a great atmosphere, by the way. I was there. Joey and I were there. That was a great environment. That was a tough, hard-fought win. Defense, probably one of the better defensive games of the season, Will. And then later, you go on the Plains and beat Auburn to get to 6. And Pavia's 3-0 against Hugh Freeze, undefeated in the state of Alabama now, especially after the Birmingham Bowl at 4-0. You kept taking that step. You kept, okay, can you get to 6 now? After beating Kentucky, it's going to be tough at Auburn on the road. They'll be desperate. They do it. They kept defying the odds, Will, and I think that's the biggest thing about this team. And I got a text from somebody. I know I'm rambling, but I got a text from somebody after the Virginia Tech win, and he's a guy that is from Nashville, has been going to Vandy games. Grew up going to the James Franklin era games. He told me after that win that even James Franklin didn't have a win like that at Vanderbilt, where it's a roller coaster. You get down late and you're playing a good team, but you find a way to win late with an electric quarterback. That type of win, and they had a lot of those. Well, they had a lot of tough, grinded out games that they had to win at Auburn, at Kentucky. I think the mentality of this team is what I'll remember most. And maybe it's a different mentality next year. I can't imagine it will be with Pavia at the helm still. But the mentality of this team was special, and I think that's what carried them through this season.
Yeah, and what you said earlier about them playing to their opponent's level is very true. Whether they were playing Ball State or Texas or Mizzou. I mean, the only game that we blew someone out was pretty much Alcorn State. Now, I know that the Georgia Tech game got out of hand. I guess you could say the Georgia Tech game was out of hand before the rain delay, right? And then that kind of gave Georgia Tech an end to make a comeback, or a fake comeback, right? But yeah, I mean, when we were playing Texas close, Billy, when is the last time you watched a Vanderbilt team play a Texas, who I think was number 1 at the time, if I'm not mistaken? Maybe they were at least top 5, and you felt we have a chance. Like there is a legitimate chance we could beat them. I never felt like that. Even with James Franklin, I didn't really feel like that because it just felt like the talent disparity was too
Mhm.
much.
Yeah.
But with this team, this is the fighting team, man. They're going to go punch you in the mouth. They're going to make it a brawl for 60 minutes. And you just felt like they had a legitimate chance. Um, so it's just like you said, totally different mentality going into next year. Now the question is, are they going to be able to fix that depth issue? Because down the
Mhm.
stretch, we started to look, pretty tired. We didn't really have the talent to swap out to compete with some of these teams down the stretch. And I know we're going to get in the portal class a little bit, but it's very, very vital to get these signings correct, to have those players not have a huge drop off when Cedric Alexander's out or Junior Sherrill's out or Langston Patterson's out or, so on and so forth. We need talent to not, I mean, we don't need to have when someone else cuts on the field, be like, holy, oh my God, I can
Yeah.
tell a huge difference. They're not making an impact. But I think that's what they're doing. I think this recruiting, this transfer class is pretty good. It's pretty solid, especially for Vanderbilt standards. And I think the expectations next year, Billy, are to do better, like win more than 7 games. I think in 2025, I think that is the goal. I don't think, I mean, 6-6 again would be okay because how often have we made a bowl game in our history? This was our 10th bowl
Yeah.
appearance in the history of our program, right? So, but I think that's got to change. I think the standards have to be bowl games every year. Not all, if we make it, that's great in season. It happens once every 10 years statistically. No, we need to try to make a bowl game every year and exceed that. I want to see 8 wins next year. We're several months away from that happening, like
Yeah.
predictions. But who knows, man? I might go crazy with the predictions next year. I might say 8, 9 wins. I said 6 this year. I might say 8, 9 next year. But we have a true Heisman watch list candidate going into the preseason, Diego Pavia. Now, we talk on the phone about this, about what needs to happen around Pavia to make him better. Some people have been upset, like, hey, why aren't we getting receivers? It's like, well, they don't pass enough because of the offense, or, they don't know if Pavia is the quarterback to give him the ball. I think that this year, the reason why Pavia didn't really have the stats you would like for a quarterback is because he didn't have anybody to get open. That's the theme that
Mhm.
I heard all spring camp. None of these receivers can get any separation. So if they had a true receiver who could get some separation, get open, I think that there would have been a higher volume for the receiver. I mean, Stowers had a very good season as a tight end. Normally tight ends don't really have crazy numbers. I mean, especially in college, right? Because you're playing less
Yeah.
games. But he had a hell of a season with Vanderbilt. I mean, he would have probably been a fringe second round pick if he decided to leave. I don't know if we've got an official announcement yet if he is going to leave, but getting him back, that's a very, very big deal. And you can just see what he's able to do because of the talent. If we could get a receiver, that's like the most important thing that I think we needed, Billy. We needed a receiver. That is the next step to help this team take a bigger leap in 2025.
Yeah, let's go through the portal activity. And again, we've already got a couple of questions here in the chat room. If you guys want to have a comment or have a question there in the chat room, feel free to ask. And I might even have a mailbag episode starting. Here eventually, and maybe we'll do one mailbag episode a week. Well, we already do one with Chris and Luke, so I'm sure that'll be it. But maybe we'll do some more if you guys have more questions. But again, feel free to fire away comments and questions throughout the show. Towards the end, we'll get to some of those. But Will, let's start with the offensive line additions are interesting to me. You bring in Jordan White from Liberty. You bring in Isaiah Glass from Oklahoma State. You also brought in Gunnar Givens from Virginia Tech. But to me and to everyone really, Jordan White and Isaiah Glass are the two guys that'll likely start. Robbie actually, and he wrote a good piece here on the rankings. He ranked the portal editions on the 24/7 sports website here. Jordan White, top transfer guy, and in Robbie's mind, I agree with him as well. Isaiah Glass as well. Well, you talked about it. Yes, they need a receiver. I think they'll probably get another receiver. They'll probably go get a running back to split carries with Alexander. But to me, and I think you'd agree, the biggest change they needed, the biggest upgrade they needed was up front in the offensive line. And I think you could argue defensive line as well. Number 1 offensive line, number 2 defensive line. And I think they were able to do that. Keanu Coate as well, bringing him in from Alabama on the edge. And they've got quality depth on the interior as well. And you go back in the defensive line, maybe on the edge they weren't able to get enough pressure, but the interior of that defensive line, they were stout. Teams finally learned that they couldn't run the inside against that Vanderbilt defensive line. So again, I think the edges were important, and maybe they even get another edge rusher will. But offensive line to me was the most important. And bringing in Jordan White, whether he plays center or guard, we'll see. But he's a guy that will pull. He's athletic. Obviously, being at Liberty, connections with Coach Klenakis, and likes to play in that type of system, you'd imagine. And again, we heard a lot of the Gunnar Hansen issue was the system. And again, I think Hansen's a fine player, but Vanderbilt brings in Jordan White. I don't think that's the replacement for Hansen. You could probably say Glass could be the replacement there for Hansen. Or even this Big Pete coming in from New Mexico State there, who would likely be your left tackle. We have a question about him. But offensive line, they started to upgrade. And if they get Shiraz Pete in here from New Mexico State, who was Diego Pavia's left tackle a couple of years ago in their big season, that's an upgrade in my mind. And you've got Cade McConnell, who we've talked about, Will, is big enough. He's athletic enough. He's got a ton of experience with Tim Beck, and I think McConnell could be your center. And again, there's so much to filter out and sort through still. You've got Chase Mitchell and Stephen Hubbard there. So I think you got to give Clark credit. Also Klenakis, who development and coaching wise is I think top notch. Recruiting, again, I think portal recruiting is so much different than high school recruiting. And maybe the high school recruiting and the offensive line hasn't gone great at Vanderbilt, but you've been able to bring in portal guys, Will. So I'll start there with the offensive line: Jordan White, Isaiah Glass, and then you also bring in Gunnar Givens, who's probably a depth guy, but they had to upgrade there, and I think they have so far. And if they bring in Big Pete, I think you could really start to see that O-line start to solidify.
Yeah, I'm curious about a couple guys. I am excited about Jordan White. I think he could be a very good center. I mean, he had interest from Michigan and Ole Miss and chose to come here over both of those schools. Isaiah Glass, I'm a little on the fence about Billy because I've heard he's honestly like a one-of-one swap with Gunnar Hansen. I don't know if he's going to be any better than him, which Gunnar Hansen, like you said, was okay in some circumstances. Like, he wasn't great, but he was all right. I think it's a position you would ideally like to upgrade at. And if this Pete guy comes in and he plays, maybe he could be better than Hansen and kick Isaiah Glass to the opposite side and have him playing the Chase Mitchell role, which I think he will be better than Chase Mitchell. I don't think Chase Mitchell was very good last year. I think Chase Mitchell is better suited at playing guard. And the great thing is all these names we're talking about, Billy, competition. Let the people battle it out. Last year, guys were having to start by default because there was no other options. But now it seems like they're going to actually have some guys who can battle for starting positions. And that if they don't win, they'll have a legitimate 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th guy. How many backup offensive linemen did we realistically have last year who could come in and play? Maybe 1, maybe 2. I think that's pushing it, honestly. This year, that could be different. So an injury, a breather, whatever it may be, you can have some guys come in here and actually compete for the starting 5 on the offensive line. And you mentioned Cade McConnell. That could be an option at center. Maybe he plays tackle. Hell, maybe he plays guard. Who knows? He can play probably all 5 positions. Maybe Grayson Morgan gets healthy and he can play somewhere on the offensive line. Now, I wouldn't bet on that specifically because, he's doing
better, I've heard. But yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, all due respect.
Yeah, I mean, this will be it's crazy to believe, but this is year 4 for him, and he's not played more than 1 game just because he can't avoid injury. So I'll believe it when I see it. But if he can be healthy, you would have to think he would be somewhere probably in the mix in the starting offensive line. Yeah. Or worst case scenario, your 6th guy, right? Or 7th guy. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens with him and what the starting five will be. If they get to camp and there's someone else they need, that maybe they'll go at make an addition in the spring portal. But look, the offensive line is in a much better state now than it was a year ago. So that's always a positive.
All right, let's go defensive line. Keanu Code from Alabama is intriguing. He's a guy. I mean, anytime you get a guy from Alabama, your ears perk up a little bit. And I think Vandy fans got excited. Played in 7 games last year, only 5 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. I think he did run into some off-field issues. But you look at him, you just look at one picture of him. I think as a Vandy fan, you get excited. 6'4", 242. He's your classic modern-day edge rusher. I think, what's interesting here, Will, is, Miles Capers is solid. I'm really interested to see how that and maybe that's just a competitive battle between Coat and Capers, and I don't think there's any problem with that. I think if anything, Vanderbilt needs that. They need that edge rusher depth. So you've got Keanu Coat. Still think they could have brought in another defensive lineman. Maybe they do. Aaron Bryant from Texas, a guy that has played a lot of football. He's played a lot of Power 4 football as well, and he's categorized as a Power 4 starter in the 24/7 sports transfer rating and a Group of 5 standout. So that's kind of the category he's in. But other than that, that's what you got on the defensive line. And again, I like the depth they already had there, Will, but Keanu Coat, that's a good addition. And we'll get to some of the other defensive additions, but I know you were excited about that addition as well.
Well, what's unique about him is he didn't play not because he wasn't good, but because of who he was playing behind. His first year or his second year, I think maybe it's his redshirt year. Either way, he was buried behind Will Anderson Jr., who we know is very good for the Texans, Dallas Turner, who is a very good player at Bama. And then the year he finally gets a chance to start, I think he had a little bit of some drama, maybe on-field or off-field, got into some off-field trouble and kind of derailed his season. So the talent is there. He just really hasn't been able to put it together because of talent in front of him and then an incident he had off the field. So, yeah, man, I think that this is more exciting than the Corday Sidner addition a year ago. I think way more exciting. I mean, because he was almost a 5-star recruit, Billy, coming out of high school. Mm-hmm. So the talent's got to be there.
Well, and he was the first portal get, if I'm not mistaken, which, and we talked a lot. Maybe there's an Alabama pipeline here. Maybe Vanderbilt recruits to some of those Alabama second stringers. Yeah. I mean, and credit to Harding Harper. He's obviously been involved there, but let's go to the back end here. CJ Hurd from FAU, who they were really excited about, and they are still excited about. A lot of production. I think you could argue he's the best get they've gotten. I still think impact-wise, those offensive linemen are still up there. But last year, 82 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass breakup, a forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries. This guy, I think you look at his run support. I mean, he's a heavy hitter. They call him, you look at his hair, he's got blonde dreadlocks, and they're calling him Sea Snake. And he went viral during one of the games last year. He's a good player. I mean, really good player. And again, not the biggest guy, 5'11", 200 pounds, but he had a ton of Power 4 offers coming out of high school. I think he originally committed to Florida State. There's obviously going to be some competition there with Dante Carter. Marlon Sewell, apparently rumored to be coming back as well. But you lose Taylor and DeRicky Wright. You had to get a guy like CJ Hurd. That's a good get, Will.
You know why they call him Sea Snake, right?
Yeah. No, the what's that movie?
It's from the show House of Dragon.
Okay, the House of Dragon.
Yeah, House of Dragon. Yeah, no, that does look like a good get. I was curious why Florida State and him didn't work out. That maybe they dropped him, or maybe something happened. I don't think it'd be something academically, but either way, he goes to Florida Atlantic, and I think he was not just all freshman team. I think he was wasn't he all conference, all American?
Yeah, mid-season All American. I think that's what it was.
All American Athletic Conference. Yeah, so that is a good get. Maybe someone that can play either next to Marlon Sewell or Dante Carter if he's able to, take that next step and solidify his starting spot at safety. But yeah, man, I think that could be. I think that Hurd could be better than DeRicky Wright. I think DeRicky Wright was okay, but he was 6'4", 230, kind of awkward, not really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was. I don't think he was bad, but I think that is obviously a position that could have been improved. So yes, I'm excited about him, and I think talking about the back end, I'll be curious to see what Jordan Matthews from Tennessee can do.
Yeah, and Jake Kendrick here with a good comment here on Jordan Matthews. I'm with you on that too. I thought that was a quality pickup. Played in every game last year for Tennessee. Not a ton of action, only 3 tackles, a couple of PBUs, but he's been categorized as a solid power 4 starter and with an NFL trait. He's long, he's 6'2", and I think you look at him in that cornerback room. You've got Martell Height coming back. Marlon Jones and Mark Davis are, those are guys you want to be huge contributors this year, but you've got to tread lightly with them because they didn't play last year. And obviously they're coming off, Marlon's coming off, a serious health issue, and Mark Davis is coming off a big time injury as well. How do they come back from that? Jalen Lackey, inexperienced sophomore. Well, he's experienced now. He's got a year under his belt, but there's available, room to start there. I'm not saying Jordan Matthews is going to start, but I like that pickup. And, anytime you get a guy by the name of Jordan Matthews, that's
big shoes to fill, right?
Should be a good player.
Well, though I heard about him because I have some Tennessee friends, sadly, right? I think they were expecting him to start this coming year. Like you said, he got some action, maybe not as much as he would have liked, but they were saying that they thought he could be a starting corner for them in 2025, that he had that potential. So to get someone like that from your state rival, probably your biggest rival you have, I mean, that's a great addition, right?
Yeah.
Taking away and hopefully contributing to us.
Yeah. From Louisiana too. And I mean, you think about all the DBs, LSU being DBU there's a lot of good defensive backs have come out of the state of Louisiana. So I think if anything, depth piece, but dream scenario would be he steps up and really grows into his body too. He could probably get a little bit bigger, but long prospect and especially we'll see what happens with Colby Taylor. Again, nothing's been announced there yet, but we'll see. We'll see what happens to that cornerback room. Make sure we got everybody covered on defense. I think we do. Let's go offense here. Again, they needed a receiver. They got a couple, but do they fill that need? I don't personally think they do. Maybe by the end of the season they do. I still think they need another receiver, Will, and we've talked about that. You bring in Trent Hudson from Mississippi State, who didn't do anything last year. Obviously, there's some issues there between him and the coaching staff, but at the end of the day, he's got a better relationship with Pavia, Beck, and Kill and all the other New Mexico State guys. So I think that's a benefit. And he should, number one, play more this year than he did last year and do more and produce more. And, Beck and Kill, this is their guy. They're bringing him in because of what he did with Pavia a couple of years ago. But you also look at Chance Fitzgerald, again, younger kid, not sure how much he's even going to play this year, but given how little depth they have in the receiver room, Fitzgerald might have to play a little bit this year. Will, where do you, because for me, I think this offense lends itself to some receivers in the portal going, how many touches am I going to get? Yeah. How many, am I really going to get the ball as much as I want to? And we've talked about that a lot. I think that's an issue. They got to go out and get another receiver. Fitzgerald and Hudson, not bad players. Again, I'm not ripping them, but I think for you to get to that next step and get to that 8th win potentially, you need a burner. You need a guy that consistently, like the Titans needed Calvin Ridley. I think Vanderbilt needs a guy like that where you can go, hey, go get us a post touchdown here, or get us this 3rd and 10 on this corner route. Quincy Skinner, I thought, could do that at times. We know Sherrill's role. He's a slot, but he should be the 2nd or 3rd guy on this team in a perfect world. So maybe Hudson steps into a role that a ton of people aren't expecting, Will, but he didn't do anything last year, and I think there's a lot for him to prove. But we've talked about it. They still need to bring in another receiver because those two guys they have that they've brought in, and they've got younger guys, that we've highlighted before, whether it's McVay or Brown. Jeremiah Dillon didn't really do anything this year. Boski Barrett had that post route that should have been a catch there in the Birmingham Bowl. LeBron Hill, you bring him in. Cameron Dixon, Dixon, I think they're excited about, but again, he's a young player. Not a ton of explosiveness in that receiver room. I think that needs to be improved still.
No, I agree. And one of the things about Trent Hudson when he committed, that one of the reasons I wasn't excited, Billy, is because this is a guy that has a history with Jerry Kill and Tim Beck and Diego Pavia. And if he was good enough to play for this team in 2025 when we have high expectations, why wasn't he someone they tried to get in 2024 when we knew that the receiver room desperately needed some guys? And we know that the Jerry Kill, the Diego Pavia, the Tim Beck effect, by the way. That's really catchy. Either way, that has a lot of pull. That has a lot of meaning. So if they called him up and said, "Look, Hudson, we want you here at Vanderbilt. We need you. You're going to play. We need some players." You would like to think he would have been like, "All right, coach, I'm in. Like, I'm coming to Vandy. I'm going to go reunite with Diego Pavia." But they didn't choose to do that. They went a different route. So if he wasn't good enough to play for him in 2024, why is he good enough to play for him in 2025 when the dial has been raised? Like, there's going to be higher expectations for this team. Now, Chance Fitzgerald is an unknown commodity. I don't know how much he's going to contribute in 2025.
I heard from some people that Virginia Tech was expecting him to start next year. I don't know how true those are, but saw him in high school, raw still. But I think if anything, you trust Alex Bailey to develop him, get him in the weight room, get him bigger. He's a local kid that probably loves being in Nashville. But again, no immediate contribution, I don't think, from Chance Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I'm not. I still think they need someone that's a little bit more proven than either one of those guys. I was hoping that they were going to get the kid from Arkansas who ended up going to Oklahoma, which we weren't going to outbid.
That was a dream.
Yeah. So we're not going to outbid him. Now, did Squirrel White commit to anywhere yet? I know that there were rumors about him
Florida State.
So he did go to Florida State. Yeah, we need someone that's a little bit more proven. We have the money to do it. I think it's very important. And I know we talked about this on the phone and we debated a little bit. Maybe you thinking that it's not as big of a need just because of our system, like to go get a guy who's got 800, 900 yards in a season. But I do think that even just having the threat of someone who can make a difference could change the whole offense. Knowing that guy on the outside could make a play, make you have to focus more on him, take less attention off Pavia or Cedric Alexander or whoever the other running back is. It just kind of opens the floodgates if you can have someone who can make a play on the outside. And also, how much would that open up Eli Stowers? I mean, I think that's another thing that, could help Eli even take his game to the next step or next level. So, yeah, receiver is definitely, of all the position groups, receiver is still a huge question mark for me, Billy. That is probably the one I don't feel confident in heading into 2025 at this moment.
Running backs, they don't bring in a running back. I think they will. I think they're going to bring in a running back. Star Thomas, has he landed? I don't think Star Thomas has landed anywhere. And again, I think that's a guy you got to look at as a guy that is similar to Cedric Alexander, but could even prove to have a higher ceiling than him. And you could split carries if Alexander gets hurt, you've got him right there. When Alexander was hurt, I'll go back to that. I think it was LSU. Well, you knew Alexander was banged up. Obviously, Pavia was banged up. And your only other option was Chase Gillespie. You had Monty Jones. Cardenas didn't play. But, you just didn't have another guy. I think you need basically a clone of Cedric Alexander and maybe even a little bit better.
I think better.
Are you in a spot where you can do that and where you want to do that? Because what's the bigger need? I think a big question, we've already got a comment about this. What's the bigger need, running back or receiver? Because I think within this Pavia and Alexander together, I think are just fine. I really do. And Chris and I have debated about this. You and I have debated about this. I think bringing in a running back that could split carries with them. My thing is, if you bring in a running back who is potentially better than Alexander, does that hurt the locker room in that running back room a little bit? Again, that maybe I'm being
That shouldn't matter though.
overcautious there.
You should try to get the best players available to push each other. And Cedric Alexander, I agree with you. I think that running back has to be addressed. I think both positions have to be addressed. Why does it have to be one or the other? It needs
Yeah,
to be
I'm
both.
I'm saying that you don't have to get, like, if you get a guy similarly built to Alexander, similar talent level, skill wise, I think that's fine. I don't know that you need a guy that's absolutely better than Alexander and to get a guy that will start over Alexander. I guess what I'm saying. And so, and we've got comments about that, and we'll continue to talk about that. But again, either way, both of us believe they're bringing in a running back, or at least they should, because again, Gillespie kind of is who he is. Monty Jones is not going to break open a 45-yard touchdown.
I think he's gone too, by the way. I think Jones is
Yeah,
gone.
he's. I had him listed as a question mark on this roster tracker. Johan Cardenas is a guy that I liked when he came here. Is he ready? They like Gabe Fields a lot, the freshman. But again, if you want to get to that 8-win mark, that sort of that next step this season, probably need to bring in another running back. And again, we'll continue to talk about that. I do want to get to the chat room to close it out.
I just want to touch on it real
Will.
quick, just real quick. Yeah, I would think that Cedric Alexander has proven he's not a home run hitter. You remember back in the Titans days when you had Lindell White and you had Chris Johnson smash and dash? I think that Cedric Alexander's that ground and pound running back who gets you 4 or 5 tough yards. We need a speedster bad, Billy. They thought Newberry could be that, but he didn't really play as well as you would have liked in 2024. And it's hard to believe Cedric Alexander only had like 4, maybe 500 rushing yards in 2025. And I think what we need to do is, even though Pavia is very, very elusive and dangerous when he can run, we need to limit his carries because that's what got him beat up down the stretch. We can't afford to have him have 220 carries again in 2024, or he might not make it the whole season.
All right, let's get to the chat room to close it out. I'm going to try to keep these at 40, 45 minutes max, just so it's not dragging on for people. And again, maybe our roundtable podcast will be a little bit longer. But looking forward to these. I think y'all are going to love these. And again, Will come on a good bit, especially talking a lot of football and especially leading up to the season. Joey, Robbie, Chris, Luke, whoever you guys want, comment what guests you guys want potentially on here. But at the end, the last 5-10 minutes, I'm going to run through these chat room comments and questions, and Will and I will get to these. From Cameron, any chances we get Jade McGowan back? I don't think so. It's interesting. He is back in the portal. I don't think he's landed anywhere, but I think it's kind of a London Humphreys situation. And I put this on the board. I don't think Vanderbilt. I don't think Humphreys is coming back to Vanderbilt because there's too many bridges that were burned there, and I think Jane McGowan is similar there. So no, I don't think there's a chance Vanderbilt gets McGowan back. From Mike, any more additions other than Pete before the spring? How many additions are you expecting in the spring transfer window? I think this is a good question. How many additions other than Pete? So, and again, I think Pete, they're going to land Pete. And also, breaking news, Marlon Sewell just withdrew from the transfer portal. So Vanderbilt will be getting Marlon Sewell back, which Robbie actually reported on. So he was ahead of everybody on that, like he usually is. Any more additions other than Pete? I do think so. I think another receiver, another running back.
Before the spring.
Oh, you're saying before? Okay. Well, Pete, no. That's a good question, though.
I don't think so. I think that they're gonna probably stand pat, see what they have in the spring, and then make some additions, because the portal is not necessarily running dry, Billy, but it's all the good players have pretty much picked their new destination. I think that they will probably see what they have.
So yeah. I think I read that slightly wrong. So other than Pete, no, but other additions: running back, receiver, edge rusher. That's it for me. And maybe you have a couple others, but those are the other additions I would say right now.
I think they're going to stand pat. Maybe one or two, but they're going to probably roll into the spring with what they have.
All right, from William, have there been any staff changes or rumors about potential moves? I don't think so. And again, there's always, I feel like every year there's a surprising, like, minor staff change that's made. I've talked about Lee Pack. Lee Pack, I think, is one of the best special teams coordinators in the country. I really do. And honestly, I'm not saying he's leaving, but I think there are guys on this staff. And we talked about Tim Beck. Beck obviously isn't leaving with Pavia staying. But, I think Lepek's a guy to watch potentially. I'm not saying he's leaving. But no, really, I don't. That would be the only potential move I would look at. I think there's good staff members, Kendall Lawson, Jamal Richardson. This is a good coaching staff, but a lot of them are young, and a lot of them like being in Nashville and want to keep building. So, no, I wouldn't say there are. We got to Jake's on Jordan Matthews. Danny, any inklings about Big Pete might be the key to everything? I think that's a good point. I think Robbie's got a crystal ball in for him. I think they'll probably land him, and I think the question for him, he'll be playing in the SEC against, edge rushers that are going to be looking to fly right by him, but the thing is, he's long and he's played with Pavia. That's huge. I think, just like Hudson, I think that's big for Hudson. I think that's big for Shiraz Pete, and he's massive. I mean, he's probably can put on a little bit more muscle, just weight in general. But I think that's a good point from Danny. Will he might be the key?
Yeah, I think he is going to be heavily relied on in 2025, and I've heard conflicting reports. Like I don't know if he's going to be here for the spring or if it's going to be the fall. I think maybe he needed to graduate from New Mexico State before he could transfer. So I'll be curious to see if he ends up coming, when he'll actually step foot on campus.
Joseph West talking about Jordan Matthews. He was behind Jermon McCoy this year, who was a really good corner. That's a good point on him, and being able to learn from McCoy. Jake says the guy from Virginia Tech is a good backup. I think he's talking about Chance Fitzgerald.
Yeah, or maybe he's talking about the lineman.
Could be talking about Givens as
yeah.
well. I think I don't disagree on Fitzgerald. Again, I wouldn't say that quite yet. But again, we'll see what happens with him. Scott, Joseph McVay, and Bryson Coleman could be sneaky next season. I agree. I've told people to really watch out for Bryson Coleman. I think he's going to be that flex tight end receiver. They like him a lot. He got hurt, which was just a brutal blow to them before the season. He was making freak show plays in fall camp. And so I'm with you on Coleman more than McVay. But, McVay, I think, is definitely a guy to watch. Cortez, I'm not sure what question that he's referring to there. Scott, the counter argument to what you said about Trent Hudson, how do you know they didn't try to get Hudson last season? Well, he probably thought Mississippi State was the better situation.
I mean, I think that Jerry Kill could get anybody he wanted from New Mexico State if you really wanted him.
I heard, and again, this could be a rumor. I heard academically was a little bit of the reason last year, but again, who knows? Scott, proven star wide receivers are hesitant to come to Vandy because of our offense. We talked about that. I agree. Danny says that's why we should take shots on group of 5 studs instead of proven Power 4 transfers. I think that's a good point. I've tried to tell people that. Vanderbilt is not going to, I think you should save where Vanderbilt's at right now. You should save you should save a couple of spots, maybe 3 for a few big fish that you absolutely need. But you're not going to be able to get at every position a guy you want and are going to be able to spend. You're just not. Now, maybe down the road they get to a point where they can, but I think group of 5 studs is where Vanderbilt's at right now. That's their bread and butter.
I agree. But I do think that me and you both have mixed feelings about this recruiting class or this transfer class, but I still think they're trying to figure things out, and there's still the spring, still some guys to get, but overall, I'd say they did pretty good.
Seth says running back is an even bigger need than wide receiver. That's the debate. I mean, I still think receiver's a bigger need. I think Alexander is just fine within this offense. I think if you improve the offensive line, he'll be even better. The offensive line was the bigger need there. We had a comment there too. But again, I know you disagree, Will, but that'll be interesting to see, do they get a receiver and a running back, or do they just get a receiver? That'll be really interesting. Danny, Star Thomas yards per carry in conference is comparable to Alexander. Okay. Yeah, which I don't think would be a bad thing, again, to bring Star Thomas in. Cortez running back is more important. It'll help even
lower
Pavia's carries over the year. Yeah.
That's important. That's important because
that's a
he
good,
got hurt
good
because
counterpoint.
because the offensive line wasn't as good as it needed to be. 215 carries or 220 didn't help either. So yeah, I mean, they definitely need to have someone who can take the load off him as well.
And it's a good point from Scott. O-line was the bigger issue. You can't run anywhere when there's not holes. That is a good point. I think there was a lot going on there. And Scott also says they're going to add more players before the spring.
We'll see.
So that's a question. I think some people got confused by that. I got initially confused by that question. That question there was any more additions other than Pete before the spring, which will be interesting. And again, I don't know. My gut tells me Pete will be the only one, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. And Vanderbilt's still going to add players. We know that. Follow along with Robbie's roster tracker there, roster depth chart tracker on the board. And again, it's been awesome. This move has been awesome, and we're going to keep these live shows going again Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. going through however long we need to go. If we got plenty of comments and questions, we've got basketball going on. Of course, we'll get Joey on tomorrow to preview the Mississippi State game tomorrow at 8:00. But still a ton of football to talk about. Well, it's cool to have a lot of football still to talk about with all this offseason activity, and it's going to be fun to see. I think fans like that, but it's kind of like the NFL where you've got so much offseason activity. But
hey, that's a good counterpoint right there. So Scott says we couldn't get Star Thomas from Mexico State because of grades, and then Danny D, his rebuttal is, how did he get into Duke then? Duke's more prestigious than Vandy's, I think, academically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with Star Thomas and Trent Hudson. Like, why weren't they at Vanderbilt last year? I think I would love to put truth serum on probably Jerry Kill and Clark Lee, sit them down and say, and again, maybe they just weren't fits at the time. Maybe Clark made a decision and Barton and said, hey, we've got Alexander, we've got Newberry, we like what we've got at running back. Maybe they got proven wrong. Maybe they
isn't that what we said? I remember calling you up. I'm like, Billy, what are we doing, man? Are we just going to be New Mexico State Commodores? Like, we are taking too many guys.
I agreed with them at the time too. I thought, I thought Alexander would fit well with Pavia, and you had Newberry. I thought Gillespie might develop a little bit better, but he is who he is. And you had Monty Jones. I thought they were fine, but again, you get later in the season, and I learned, just like the staff probably learned, that you need more there. You need more at running back. And look at Tennessee. Look at a lot of the SEC schools. They've got 3 really strong running backs because they know in the SEC you got to have it. So no, that's a good point. And again, I love this comment section here. We're going to keep these flowing, and again, we'll get Will on, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it's got to be. But we'll talk football, and we'll talk football with you guys. But again, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. We'll roll for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Those Wednesdays will probably be an hour with Luke and Chris, of course. But subscribe to Vandy 24/7. The board's hopping. We've got stories left and right, and glad to have Will helping us out here. Will, appreciate it, man. That was fun. Let's do it again.
Always a pleasure to talk Vanderbilt football, so I appreciate it, Billy.
All right, that's Will Forbes, and that'll do it for the very first episode of Vandy 24/7 Live. We'll be back tomorrow with Joey Dwyer. We'll talk a lot of basketball. We'll preview Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. For myself, Billy Derrick, thanks for checking out the first edition of Vandy 24/7 Live.